Right, so our recording has begun. So again, welcome everyone. I'm going to go ahead and share our screen to introduce this training. So this is how to effectively advocate to your elected officials. This is via webinar. Today is May 4th, 2021. Our guest presenter is Ms. Katie Yost, the Manager of Government and Chapter Relations from the ARC of Pennsylvania. Just a quick disclaimer from the ARC of Lehigh and Northampton counties. Our advocacy department does not employ lawyers nor provide legal advice. This training or any other provided by the ARC's advocacy department does not constitute or imply the endorsement, recommendation, or favoring of the providing party or any employees or contractors acting on its behalf. This webinar is being provided for educational and informative purposes only. I'll go ahead and stop this share. So now it is my pleasure to introduce our guest presenter, Ms. Katie Yost. Katie is the Manager of Government and Chapter Relations with the ARC of Pennsylvania. She graduated from Lebanon Valley College with a degree in History and Political Science. She received her master's degree in Human Rights and International Politics from the University of Glasgow in Glasgow, Scotland. Katie is a fierce advocate for human rights of others and believes that advocacy to elected officials is essential for effective change. Thank you for your time this evening, Katie. The Zoom is all yours.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm very excited for this. I'm going to get ready here and share my screen with my PowerPoint. But again, as Jessica said, thank you so much for joining us tonight and learning about how to be an effective advocate. Give me 1 second here as I go ahead and share. Well, everyone, thank you so much for joining us here tonight. I'm very excited to begin talking with you about how you become an advocate. And specifically, I'm going to focus on advocating to your elected officials. It's what I do every day. It's why I come to work. It's why I think the ARC of Pennsylvania and our local chapters, such as the ARC of Lehigh Northampton, has such the mission and the relationship they do is because they are very fierce advocates. And anyone can be an advocate, because being an advocate doesn't always mean you're the loudest. It just means you're the most there, and you're also the most truthful. That's always something I say, and something very key to being an advocate is you just give the truthful and most honest information you have on the issue that you're there about that day. So we're going to go ahead and start, and I'm going to start by saying, how do you become an advocate? So there are 3 ways that we're going to focus on here with becoming an advocate. Number 1, we're going to focus on what is advocacy and why should we advocate. Advocacy 2 is the art of developing an effective relationship with your legislator. And part 3 is going to be advocate and communicate effectively with your legislator. Each of these is very, very essential for how you learn to become an advocate. So advocacy part 1, what is advocacy and why should you advocate? So advocacy, simply defined, is the art of pleading or arguing in favor of something such as a cause, idea, policy, and giving your active support, or in some cases, your active opposition to an issue. You can be an advocate for anything from clean drinking water to better access to education. It's a whole gambit. You advocate on a daily basis. You are your own self-advocate. If you are meeting with someone, you say, hey, my mental health is just here right now and I can't do this. That's you being an advocate for yourself. So advocacy isn't always the big going and stomping down to Washington, D.C. It's just sharing the honest truth of where you're at that moment. So why should you advocate? And the whole basis of why advocating is educating. Legislators are very hardworking individuals. They cover a lot of issues. And because they cover a lot of issues, they aren't going to be super knowledgeable about everything, because they have to cover everything, as I say in my PowerPoint, from special education funding all the way to agricultural issues. So because of that, they really rely on advocates to come and share the information with them and give them the background knowledge that they need to be able to do their job. So because of that, it's our job to inform them of the issues that affect individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And this is really key, is you want to have those personal stories and connections to the legislators. So having their constituents come, their families or self-advocates is always so crucial, because they want to hear from the individual that it impacts the most. And this is where it's a lot of fun, because this is where you get to connect and build those personal relationships that are key in your daily life, are also key in becoming an effective advocate for the issues that you care about, and especially with your legislators and your elected officials. So how do you become an advocate? So now we're going to talk about the two big ways. So number one, you really want to understand your issues. So how do you do that? If you are an individual, as I think most of you shared that you are family members, you live this every day. You have the experience of the every day. So you're going to have that lived experience of understanding the issue that you're going to talk about, if it's within the intellectual and developmental disability, or what I'll call IDD sphere. The next way you can do it is to check out websites from trusted organizations and groups. This is everything from your local ARCs to your anything like Disability Rights of Pennsylvania, the Pennsylvania Disabilities Council. Make sure you're going to those trusted resources, because as I said at the beginning, sharing the honest truth with legislators is so critical. And you don't want to give them information that isn't correct. Now, if it's an honest mistake, that's one thing, but making sure that the information you're going to share with that legislator is factual and true is so important. The next way you can learn more about your issues is to sign up for email and action alerts. Most organizations nowadays have an email alert that you can get. They'll send you updates on what they're doing. The ARC of PA does this. We actually have two systems. We have our like your normal newsletters that you get. So for the ARC, it would be our In Touch that comes out bi-weekly, but then we also have an action alert email system. And this is something that I will get ready and send out whenever I need individuals to advocate on key issues. So this is where you'll see your emails coming in that says, take action now, contact your legislator. These information resources are so critical, because that will share with you as the person on the ground, hey, this is happening and we need you to stand up and advocate if you have that capability. So the next way is also very new for some of us, and especially in the COVID world, how a lot of our communication happens is social media. So you can follow trusted organizations and key policymakers on social media. And again, really emphasizing the fact that you want to trust these individuals and that they're sharing factual information. This is also crucial with building relationship with legislators. Your legislators have social media accounts. Now, they're not all going to have all of the social media accounts, but they will all have Facebooks. Some will have Twitter or Instagrams or YouTubes. And that's where you can really get information on what the legislator is working on, but also the key issues that they are kind of caring about. So if you watch that, you can kind of learn more about them and who they are as a legislator. And if you were on last week's session, you learned there's a lot of ways to say legislative, legislature, and legislator. So sorry if I have a little bit of twisty tongue with that. And lastly, is understanding your issue is knowing who to contact. So you're not going to have all the information right away. And within my job, I cover a lot of issues, but there are some issues that I am not the expert on. And I always believe that you firmly want to know who you can go to on very specific issues, who's the expert on that issue. Because if I know there's someone who might understand Medicaid waivers better than I do in my office, I'm going to go to them to get that information, because that's so crucial. So the second way you become an advocate is by becoming involved. And you can do this by joining your local advocacy organization. You can follow the ARC of Lehigh Northampton's Facebook page. You can follow their email alerts. You can also follow any other organization that is local and important to you. Any family groups or family networks is also really crucial to building that network of advocates with you. You can become a member or volunteer if you have time. If you realize that you really are dedicated to a certain cause and you want to do that, that's a great way to become an advocate and also stay involved in the information that's happening on the ground. Well, we're getting ready to open up. So I was going to have a caveat for COVID, but the governor just announced we're going to be opening up May 31st, which is very exciting. But you can attend advocacy events in person. I know a lot of things are happening virtually right now, which has actually been really cool to see events happening online. This has actually opened up the sphere for advocates, where if you do have a 9-to-5 job and you can't get away, but you can go and attend a Facebook Live event, that's something that's really fun and really cool to do as a local advocate. So you can always attend advocacy events, and then you can also do any local trainings. What you're doing right now is that you are sitting here for a little bit with us tonight and you're learning how to become an advocate. So that's a way that you are getting involved in learning how to do something like that. So step 3 is take action. And this is it can be a bit of a mix. There's things that are super involved where you can take action if you have a lot of time, but also taking action doesn't have to be this big time investment. It can be on what you can do and what your basis is. So you can contact your local legislator through email, letter writing, phone, in person, or virtual meetings. Throughout COVID, we have done a lot of virtual advocacy meetings. The Arc of Lehigh Northampton hosted some with their legislators at the end of last summer. And the virtual advocacy meetings is actually one of my favorite things that has developed from COVID, because they are so much more personal with the legislators, but also less formal, because individuals can come, they just come on their computer screens and they're able to chat. It's not that big move of trying to get into Harrisburg if you're coming all the way here, or trying to get into their local office. So those virtual meetings are also pretty cool. You can also follow up on those action alerts you get. So those emails you get from those trusted organizations that say, take action now, contact your legislator. You can follow up with them. You can send those emails, do those calls. You can attend community events when they're in person or virtually, such as town hall meetings, PTA meetings, school board meetings. These are all ways that you can use your voice and educate those around you on disability issues. You can also inform others in your support group. So this is really critical with your family and your friends. If they don't know as much as you do about a certain issue, but you need to have more support, go to them, share the information with them, get that information more widespread, because how you build a network is just starting locally and starting close to home. So you share your information that you have with your family, your friends, they're going to take that forward, and that gets the message out there. Lastly, you can invite officials to your chapter's board meetings or special events. So say you are part of an advocacy group or a parent group that meets, invite your legislators to those events. Legislators attend local events, whenever COVID's done, they'll be attending more, but they do things like that. They do special events, they do ribbon cuttings, all that cool stuff. So that's a way for them to get into their community. So take that initial step, reach out to them and invite them to do stuff. And number 4 is stay involved. So services and how things are happening and what's going on with the IDD community is constantly changing. So that means you have to kind of keep up with some of the information that's coming out. So that's why you get those trusted resources, you have those emails and actions alert, and you learn more over time. And I always like to put this reminder in there, is what might not be relevant to you now may be relevant to you and your family at a later time. So always keep that ear out for information and kind of see what you're getting and what you can maybe use later. Okay, part 2, how you develop an effective relationship with your legislator. And this is where I really am going to dive in, and I'm going to share some of my personal stories. So I have really these quick tips on how to build a relationship with your legislator. And some of these are stemmed from my own personal experience, in the fact that I actually grew up right down the road from my House of Representative, or my state representative, up until he just retired. So we have a new one. But I grew up down the road from him. His wife was my high school nurse. And then I ended up working in the House of Representatives for a little bit after college. So these are kind of the tips I have as a former staffer and as someone who grew up in a very small rural community with my legislator right down the road. So first and foremost, stay positive. Now, even if you're there to talk about something that's really heavy and something that is actually really hard and difficult, um, body language and posture and positivity in your interaction is always key. Someone who is positive in their manner, even if they're on a serious topic, is someone that people are going to remember. So that's always something I like to start out with. Next is use every chance you get. As I said, my legislator for most of my life, up until recently, lived a mile and a half down the road. His wife was my high school nurse. He goes to where my mom works at the bank. So I have used those connections. I have frequently had people pop up, and this can even happen in more urban areas. You can see this, but use every chance you get. You never know who you know that might know your elected officials. You might have gone to school with their niece or their nephew. You might go to the same place of worship as their parents. Just build that network. Use every chance you get. And that kind of goes into get to know your legislator as a human being. They are an individual. They do have individual needs. They have families. Get to know them on a personal level, kind of understand who they are, and also learn the kind of the key issues that they really advocate for their community. You want to do your homework. You want to go into these meetings, you want to meet with them and kind of have a background. You don't really want to fly by the seat of your pants. So make sure you have that back end covered with that and kind of have some ideas of what you're going to talk about. You want to work with staff. And again, this is my pro tip as being a former staffer. Staff really help make the world go round. As I said in the last section, legislators can't be experts on everything. So that staff member is really critical. And also staff are going to be a lot of times the first people you interact with in the office. So build that relationship, work with your staff. Build your network, and lastly, get involved in the political process. If you're not super into politics, that's fine, but just even understanding the political process, very similarly to what we talked about last week, we're understanding the legislative process. That will really help you get have a relationship with your legislator and build those foundation blocks. So some more tips to follow with staying positive. You want to keep a positive experience because that might mean that'll give you a next opportunity to come in and visit. As I said before, you can always kind of see where you're at. And then that also gives the legislator that reminder of when something else might come up that you need to come in. They're going to remember you, remember that meeting. And then that's going to help build that rapport and relationship. You never want to threaten those who disagree with you. I have been in many meetings where I have had legislators disagree with what I'm meeting with them about, but you always need to enter in very professionally and also not threaten. You are there to give information and to educate them. So that's always what I have in the back of my mind is I'm here to educate. And even if they don't agree with me, we need to make sure that the meeting has a positive benefit at the end of it. So how can you next use every chance you get? You can do in-person meetings, Zoom meetings, written letters or emails, phone calls, attending rallies in person, doing virtual meetings. There are so many ways you can get involved and also different types of advocacy you can use. One of the questions we had submitted prior was, what do you do if someone's not a good, how do you help someone who might not be a good writer other than a template? And it's kind of hard to do it because most of the ways I use are a template or sample letter. But the thing I would say is that you don't have to write a letter. If you're not a good letter writer, but you're a good verbal speaker, give them a call. If you're better meeting someone in person and trying to put your words out on paper, go to that meeting in person. Advocacy can happen on all different fronts, and no one way is better than the other. It's just making sure that your voice is heard in whatever mechanism you can. You want to take advantage of community events. This is really critical in your local communities and also where you're going to see your legislator most. You're going to see them at the county fairs. You're going to see them at the school board meetings. You're going to see them at those community events. So that's your opportunity to really get that interaction with them one-on-one. Within that, though, you also want to be respectful of their privacy. And I know I'm skipping down to that one, but I always want to kind of tie these two together. And that's also because of the community I grew up in. It was so close. Be very respectful of their privacy. If they're out at some private event with their family, typically if they're with their kids, I tend to say don't advocate at that point. You can certainly go up and introduce yourself. You can say thank you for doing this, or thank you for being my legislator, but maybe hold off on the whole advocacy, here's my points, you should agree with me talk, because that respect and privacy is so critical, I think, in this time period that we're living through, and to respect their family or their family life or what they're going through. And lastly, on this slide, is you don't always call just when you need something. A lot of times legislators only hear from us when things are wrong. I think that's just the nature of humanity. We've seen that with reviews for restaurants or activities. Everyone likes to leave a negative review, but very few people like to leave positive ones. Get interaction with them just to say thank you or to share information. If you saw them at the local ribbon cutting, say, hey, thanks for turning up and supporting your community. That really helps build that relationship with the legislator and show that you're there to be more than just a needs-based person. You're also there to support them. So how do you get to know your legislators? You tend to pay attention more to family or friends than a total stranger. And this really goes back to that building of relationships that I talk about. And also you want to take that time to build a relationship with your legislator. You're going to know someone who knows someone who knows someone. Having those connections using introductions that you may have, as I said before, if you go to your place of worship is with one of their family members, that's a great way to introduce yourself. You can say, hi, I go to synagogue with your cousin. Hi, I go to church. Hi, I go to mosque. It's really a way to introduce yourself and also make that personal connection that is sometimes lacking in what they see and how they're interacted out with public. So that's a great way to kind of build some of those inner workings right away. Next, you want to do your homework. And this is really critical. Again, I talked about this earlier, but they can't be experts on every issue. Legislators are very busy people. They really have a lot of information coming at them from all different sides. So you want to make sure that you are giving them the most accurate and concise when you are educating them. You need to also be prepared to defend your argument. As I said, I've been in meetings where I've had legislators not agree with me, but I still have to make sure that I present my information and my arguments in a very respectful manner. And this really kind of goes into doing your research and your homework. It helps if you even know your opposing person's arguments. So if I go into a meeting and I know this person is opposed to what I'm going to say, if I already know the arguments they're going to use against me, I can build counter arguments into my message to them that kind of gets that information flowing to them in a really quick manner that's also still respectful. And lastly, you can become a resource for your legislator on information regarding your issue. This is where having all that information from trusted resources is so important, and also where you build that relationship, because if the legislator knows they can come to you and you'll give them the information they need and it's factual, they'll begin to see you as a resource, and that'll give you that relationship later on for maybe more critical issues. So working with staff, as I said before, this is always my biggest pro tip. Staff is the gatekeeper to your legislator. They very much are. I was a legislative assistant, so I did this. I ran my former boss's calendar. I ran her schedule. I answered the phones. I prepped her meetings. So always treat the staff with respect. Do not ignore them. And also, very critical, don't go around the staff. They're the person that you will most likely interact with at the very beginning and at the most. And oftentimes you'll find that staff are very willing to help you if they are treated with respect. I have been on phone calls where I was screamed at by a constituent, and I'm going to tell you, as you probably all know, the less someone is nice to you, the less you want to assist them. That's just how human nature is. So just remember to always be respectful, and just remember those are the people that get you the access to your legislator. So make sure that you build those relationships as well. So again, using your network, I've talked about this a lot, so I won't stay here very long, but use those relationships you already have with your daily community, your church, who you play sports with, all of that. Have those individuals that might know your legislator that you know, introduce yourself to them. That'll kind of give you that bridge and gap. And also remember that there is power in numbers. So the bigger your network gets, the more your voice is heard, and then the more your voice is amplified throughout the state to other legislators potentially. So how do you get involved in the political process? And this part, even if you're not very politically active, I still like to put this in because I really do believe that the political process is a necessary step. I understand that in the current time we are, it's very politicized, but it's also a great way to build those networks. And some ways you can do that is helping out on your local legislators campaign. You can be a poll worker, you can help with voter registration, you can become a member of your county's political party. These are all ways that you can also get more exposure to the legislators and also build those relationships. And always, always, always my most key point is get out and vote. Voting is so critical and so essential. Who is elected matters because especially for the intellectual and developmental disability system, we are so reliant on the state for our services and supports, and they make big decisions. They make big decisions about the state budget. I was talking to Jessica earlier. The PA state budget has to be passed by June 30th. So we need money to go into the supports and services for individuals with intellectual disabilities. And that's how that happens. So if you get out and vote, and every vote really does count, your elected officials make a difference in the services that individuals with disabilities receive in their community. So that's always a big priority I have, and a big top push is get out and vote. So before I move on to phase 3, I'm going to check the chat real quick. And I am going to check the Q&A. Yes, Magdala, I can send Jessica the slides and we can send them out to everyone. That is not a problem. Really quickly, I'm gonna stop for a second because I've thrown a lot at you really quick. Does anyone have any questions before I move on? Oh wait, you can't answer live. See, I'm sorry, this is my brain today. I will go ahead and give you guys more time, and we'll also open up. Sorry, Jessica's laughing at me because I did forget that from last week. You guys aren't unmuted yet.
Oh, yep, it's okay. When we do the Q&A, we can unmute.
Sorry, y'all. My Tuesday brain. So part 3 really quickly is advocate and communicate effectively with your legislators. Alrighty, really quickly. So go back really quick. There are 4 main ways to advocate and communicate. You can do mail either through email or handwritten letters. You can do phone, you can do in-person or virtual meetings, and also virtual platforms. So really quickly, just with email and handwritten, I'm not going to go too in depth with this, especially with the salutation, but sending emails are so critical. You can access a legislator's email oftentimes through their website, or on their website, they'll have contact forms that you fill out with your information and your question, and you shoot that over to your legislator. But one of the things I always like to make mention is understanding what title they are based off of what kind of legislator they are. So are they a state legislator? Are they a state representative, state senator? Are they a congressional down in DC? Are they a US House or US Senator? So I broke it down there. If they're a representative here in the state, they're a representative, you have your senator. But then if you're down in DC, the difference mainly is with your House of Representative member. They are called congressman or congresswoman. A correct way to address an email or a letter. In an email or in a letter, you're going to put for an address the honorable. That's just something that's super considered the old school way of doing it, but it's still really the way we all do it. And then in your body, whenever you address them, you just put dear, the title of their name. So Senator Brown. He is a local senator from the Allentown area. I would just put dear Senator Brown, comma, and that would be the way to do it. Within the body of the letter, you want to identify yourself. You want to talk where you're from, what your address is, and what your contact information is. That's critical because legislators track constituent outreach to them. So they'll verify your address to see if you're a constituent, and then they'll keep track of that. If you're emailing or writing about a specific issue that has, or a specific piece of legislation, and there's a bill number, make sure you write that bill number there if there is one. And also, if you are supporting or opposing, you want to state any concerns or how you think the bill or the issue is going to affect you in your community. And then you want to ask them to support your view. So that means if you are advocating for more special education funding in the budget, you would, and Senator Brown's a good example for this because he's the chairman of the Senate Appropriation Committee that makes those big decisions. You would put, "Dear Senator Brown, my name is Katie Yost. I live at 559 Washington Street. I'm asking you to please support increasing special education funding. It's critical for students with disabilities to get those services." So that's all you would really do. So how do you advocate to your legislator by phone? Most of the time when you do call a legislator's office, you are going to interact with the staff members. It's very rare I have seen where a legislator will pick up the phone directly, mostly because they're really, really busy. So again, you just want to be respectful, introduce yourself, identify yourself, where you live, what your address is, things of that nature. Reference a bill number if you're calling about a specific bill. Share your viewpoint, what you're saying or what information you're sharing, what view you would like the legislator to take. So do you want them to support it or oppose it? And then ask them if they know if the member supports or opposes the legislation you're calling about. Staff, if it's a really known and popular issue, will already know what the legislator position is. Sometimes they might have to get back to you if it's something a bit more minute or complex, but that's something that the staffer can share with you. And how to advocate to your legislator in person. And this also goes to virtual platforms right now with some things, but I'll start with in person. So if you're scheduling an in-person meeting with your legislator in their district office on Harrisburg, just some quick tips. Be on time. A legislator's schedule is very busy. I used to have to manage it. A lot of times they're running from meeting to meeting. So just be cognizant of your time and trying to be there on a few minutes early if possible. You want to make sure you dress appropriately. It's kind of whenever like you go to an office setting, just be appropriately dressed. And then also, if it's okay and the legislator ends up not being able to take the meeting in person, they'll have a staff or aide there who will be more than willing to take that meeting for them. They'll write down all the information you share and then share it with their legislator. Jessica, did you want me to pause for a question?
Yes, yeah. So we did get a question on what if your legislator is from a different party than you identify with? Is there any different approach to how you would advocate to them, or do you believe that they would still want to listen to you?
So that is a really good question. So whenever you go to your legislator, you're not going as the opposing party, you're going as their constituent, regardless of if you're from the same political party as them. When they first do a phone call with you, unless they know you personally, they're not going to know what party affiliation you have. The only way they would be able to find that out is by going to the county voter registration, which is what they do for re-election, but they're not going to have that information on hand. But the thing I would just say, it's the same thing. You really want to just be very respectful, even if you're coming in with an opposing viewpoint or an opposing idea. They are still your legislator, you are still their constituent, so they need to hear from you, and you still have an opinion that is valid to them. So that's how I would answer that question.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. So if you're doing an in-person meeting, and this is also very true for a virtual meeting, as I said, we did these virtual meetings with the Arc of Lehigh Northampton last summer. You want to be really clear and concise because, again, you have less than 2 minutes in any conversation when you're first meeting someone and sharing information to catch their attention and to get them invested in what you're talking about. So make sure you kind of practice what you're going to say. If you have little like nuggets or what they call sound bites that will explain the problem or how it affects people, have those ready to go. And you really want to be clear in what you want the legislator to do. If you want them to oppose a specific bill, if you want them to support a specific bill, if you want them to advocate for a specific thing, you really want to make sure you're very clear about what you want them to do. You really want to be balanced between quality and quantity. So you always want to strive for that balance of that. You want to make sure that your advocacy really has the balance between personal information and then facts and figures. So when I go into legislator meetings and I'm talking especially about budget issues, because that's kind of the time I'm in right now, I always have those facts and figures in the back of my head and ready to go, but I always bring a personal story. I always bring information about how this is impacting people now and in real life, and how funding is so crucial for the supports and services that individuals with IDD need. Not just here's the dollar amount that we need because we need more support. No, that dollar amount will support this person to do this. So that's always a really crucial part. And you also want to provide factual and accurate information. Be as transparent as possible. Give them the information you have. And it's always really critical. If you don't know the answer, do not give inaccurate information. All you have to say is I will follow up with them, follow up with you, and get them that information in a timely manner. There is nothing worse, especially because I do this on a daily basis. If I would go into a meeting with a legislator and I would provide them inaccurate information because I didn't know and I just made something up, I would lose my credibility. And in this job, it would really hurt my ability to then advocate and do that. So try and remember that credibility is earned and not given. So always try and provide the most accurate information possible. If you do make a mistake, that is human error. Just make sure that you apologize and send that information over to them. So how can you advocate to your legislator in person/virtual platforms? During your meeting, you want to introduce yourself, tell them why you're there, be authentic, be passionate, be professional. Those are my really big ones. Be engaging, smile, ask them who they are and kind of get to know them on a personal level. If this works, you can thank them for their previous support if you've met with them previously. And stuff like that. Then you really want to get into and explain the issues that affect your community. And legislators are going to want to know their local statistics. So what's happening in their district, how the state money is being spent in the district, and how your organization accesses voters in the district. So the ARC of Pennsylvania uses this very, very crucially. We always talk about how we have 12,000 members across the state. We have 30 local chapters. So we really try and get that dive down local information. You want to provide personal stories that illuminate statistics. So as I said, with the budget, I might go in with data and numbers and money amounts that I need, but I always bring in stories of how that money will actually impact. You want to provide assistance on how you can help. So I like to end meetings by saying we're always here as a resource for you on disability issues. And that's really crucial and key, again, because legislators aren't going to be experts on all issues, and making sure that they know that you are there for them and that you're giving yourself as a resource to them really helps build that relationship. And when the meeting's over, if you have any information like a fact sheet or a one-pager, go ahead and leave that, because they'll keep that information for a later date. And then just after your meeting, you want to send a thank you email or card and any follow-up information that you may have stated that you would give to them, or if new information comes up right after your meeting that you find out, go ahead and send that in that. And then lastly, as current events arise, send information to your legislators that will keep them up to date. So if you go and you advocate on an issue with special education, and it turns out that in 3 more months, something new develops, send them a follow-up email then. Say, hey, we met back at X date. I wanted to provide you the most recent information we have. here you go. That's a great way to follow through with your meetings and continue to build that relationship. And lastly, some helpful information that you can see here. The www.state.pa.us, that's where I go. That's where you can track legislation. You can find out about committee hearings, and you can learn more about your state legislators. The PA Senate and the PA House both have their own websites. They're listed there. We have the U.S. Congressional website where you can learn more about what's happening down in DC, and then also your U.S. Senate down in DC, their website. You can follow the Arc of Pennsylvania on social media. You can follow the Arc of Lehigh Northampton and really get those key informations that are coming up. You can Google your legislator and find their website. Their website will have all of the information on it. It'll have their modes of social media that they use, like all them that are listed below, but they'll also often have information about the legislator's background, the key issues they follow, and any legislation that they may have introduced that has become law. So that's a good way to kind of get those tools in there.
Thank you so much, Katie. We really appreciate your time for this presentation. I'm going to go ahead and end this recording so we can open it up for Q&A. So thank you again.